This is our Wilam Ngarrang housing project in Fitzroy on the Wurundjeri land. We think it's the only multi-res retrofit you're going to see today. Building new stuff alone is not going to solve our housing issues, and we think it's important to expand the understanding of what working in this area is. Successful sustainable architecture is not just about tech and performance, it also requires feeling and atmosphere. There's an enormous role here for architects. It's also about social sustainability. It's named Wilam Ngarrang by the Wurundjeri Land Council, meaning a place of reflection and thought. There's a lot that went into that process. It was an existing building, 3-storey block, 15 identical bed sits. You probably passed 1 million of these in Melbourne. They need love. And it was transforming it in a way that others could follow. A replicable model, a fast model that didn't require town planning processes or long construction processes, and something that could take the bones but improve the performance, make better use of the space, and give residents a more comfortable, enjoyable life. The key targets were debated and agreed, and an important part of our process was designing a team and a process, a way to do it, not just the conventional way. The design team was non-hierarchical, so it was finding Infinity, Kennedy Nolan, the builder, Wilderness Building Company, the client, Triple, the project manager, Resin, all working together for as little design as possible. It was not heroic architecture. It was modest. We had to make a case for our interventions, to be strategic, to present them to the team. We had to put our egos aside too when they didn't all make it in. We had to really, every bit had to be debated and fought over and agreed. And this is where we were ending up.
That's me. Okay. So I'll take you through the plan. Lower ground, old asphalt car parks converted to shared facilities and a garden. The ground level, we really reworked that King William Street entry and amplified that in the tiniest amount for maximum effect. And apartments made a new relationship with small courtyards, where before you saw it was just kind of bleeding into the outside of it. And there's that little entry. And first and second floor where apartments were reworked, and the old laundries at the end of the upgraded hallways became small sitting rooms. Really simple move. So it's about making a home. Importantly, there's also an emphasis on creating a sense of domestic comfort, on making places for people which are warm, welcoming and beautiful, and actually modest in their own way. This was the little original mini plan we were handed. So when space is tight, often the focus is shrinking the typical, resulting in many tiny complex things. So early little renders. Here we've aimed for a few big moves with generous scale, being efficient, not a mini house. We've thought carefully about household storage, working in a small but deep kitchen and potential furniture layouts of future residents. These bedsits may not have balconies, but new sliding window suites make a great connection with the surprisingly treed inner city environment, which we're pretty lucky to get in this part of Fitzroy. Accepting imperfection became a bit of had to get used to that. Given the objectives and financial constraints, sometimes we just had to embrace the least ugly option. Those tiles there on the left are a little example of that. So housing a community, the car park and Undercroft were perfectly located on the north of the block. And during construction, it was a place where salvage materials were stored and later repurposed. Basically, they went downstairs and we had to work out what to do with them. And the new communal laundry took this prime position with very low ceiling, and it was elevated into a social space. So we went to the marble distributor to see what they had left, and a large shared table made from marble offcuts provides an armature for being together, which is an opportunity to build community amongst the predominantly single people households in this project. So on the site, landscape was privileged and augmented and includes a shared veggie plot, hills hoist and composting for the building. And little gum saplings were one of the big, large gum trees, and we were not afraid of large canopy trees in this space. We think this is a kind of interesting one to add, that this may be kind of a little bit obvious, but it's where a pilot project finds a platform to spread the word. And if you make something visually compelling, people tend to pay attention. To Ross, Mrs. Sustainable.
Right. So I guess this is one of the first projects that we got built as this bigger citywide strategy called a new normal, $100 billion strategy to try and transform the entire city to become completely self-sufficient. Really, it was about transforming that whole strategy into 15 projects that are physical examples of the policy that we want to see. To do that, we needed to build physical examples that are profitable. We needed to make sure people love them. And basically, we kind of want to create these examples to make it easy for a politician to stand in front of, cut the ribbon and replicate. So bigger picture, we worked out it's about $100 billion to transform Melbourne. $55 billion of this is in retrofit, solar on buildings, electrifying existing buildings, building fabric upgrades. Too few of this is happening. There's 1.2 million homes in Melbourne. We wanted to start with one building. It's kind of simple. So, but the way we like to kind of frame it, it's the sum total of a bunch of really boring, cost-effective things that create something so radical. This is Australia's first plus energy retrofit of an apartment building. The perfection is in the imperfection. There's nothing perfect about this at all. We replaced the glazing, not because of the performance, because it was falling apart. We like blow-in insulation. There's airtight renders. We managed to get heat recovery ventilation in there. We've got a central domestic hot water heat system from heat pump. VRF, it didn't used to have heating or cooling, it now does, for example. And so this is the step-down diagrams of each of those components, and I'll try and keep it brief, but first plus energy retrofit of an apartment building, plus energy basically. So minimising water consumption and waste. This was quite a democratic selection of what we did in the project, and it was actually like a group survey that went out, but there were certain things that we also didn't do, and that was kind of part of it, is that we had to meet a certain budget, and that budget was basically that if we went over the budget, it would mean that the rent was higher for the residents basically. So, and it wasn't a great example. This is the running cost before, future projected, and this is what we're targeting at the moment. A minute to go. This is the overall summary, and this is for us really important that it has to be a financial example as well. So build cost 6 mil, retrofit 2 mil, that we hit the client's target return. Bills go down from $35 a week down to $2 a week. Rent had to be increased to justify it, but in that time the rent kind of has increased to that level anyway, and the idea is to retain the rent for the future. Energy, won't go into full details, but 70% reduction in comparison to what would have typically been built. Also, there's a whole bunch of work that went into embodied. 88% reduction in comparison to, 82% reduction in comparison to building something new, and we're monitoring the performance. So just lastly, I think to bring it all back, for us, a big part of this project is not, if we just did this technical financial analysis and built something that no one cared about, no one would know about it. We're having amazing conversations around the country about this project and really trying to replicate it, and we're not just talking about it, but it's really been an extremely helpful tool in that process. And to me, I'm really passionate about the fact that architecture is that vessel and that glue to be able to make sure that this is something that people really care about. Thanks.